To start the
Yes.
thing? Good evening to everybody. My name is Lorraine Marcus Eiler. I'm a board member of the International Sonoran Desert Alliance. I welcome everybody that has joined us for a session on plans for possible restoration at Quitobaquito Springs.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Muy buenas tardes, yo soy Paul Vázquez, de parte del señor Aaron Cooper, director ejecutivo, y de toda la mesa directiva de la Alianza Internacional del Desierto Sonorense. Queremos agradecerle a cada uno de los representantes que hoy nos acompañan en un proyecto muy importante, la preservación de Quitobaquito Springs. Es un lugar muy especial en nuestro desierto, un lugar histórico, un lugar sagrado para los habitantes indígenas de la nación Tohono O'odham. Sagrado y en peligro, el agua de Quitobaquito Springs se nos está secando. ISDA se ha comprometido a apoyar y salvar este oasis para las generaciones futuras. Muchas gracias y bienvenidos.
Sir. All right, folks. My name is Aaron Cooper. I'm the Executive Director for the International Sonoran Desert Alliance. And just wanted to start off by, apologizing. We're having some technical issues, particularly with the live stream. So we're just trying to quickly add folks in as we can to join. But we're also going to be recording this session, and we'll share it out that way as well for people that couldn't join simultaneously. And then two, I just wanted to set up a couple of kind of basic ground rules, so to speak, or at least set some expectations here. That the focus today is going to be pretty narrow, even though this is a really large topic with a lot of different components that play into it. We're definitely not going to be able to spend time talking about border infrastructure today, lighting there, or water removal related to that. Won't even really have a ton of time to talk about other contributing factors like agriculture in Mexico and how that might be playing into this. We are, as an organization, are very interested in some immediate and significant action to repair the pond structure in such a way that even with the current diminished flow, it will be able to retain water both for the cultural purposes, but also for the species that call that their home as well. So I just wanted to lay that out in the beginning, that if we get too far afield, I'm going to have to try to bring us back to this pretty narrow area of focus that we're talking about. The other thing I wanted to just note, and I don't think we have to get too technical on it, but this will not be, in all likelihood, won't be part of a full environmental impact statement. But we did, as a kind of a group of interested parties, felt like it was really important. It's such a sacred place to be able to allow for some significant public input and messaging around it, just to be able to understand what are some of the possible options and be able to voice opinions about those. So just wanted to kind of lay those quick rules of the road out before we started here. So with that, unless Scott, was there anything further that maybe I should add to that?
Oh, I'd like to add, I can add that I'm Scott Stone, I'm Superintendent at Oregon Pipe Cactus National Monument, and I want to say thank you to everyone who's participating this evening. We depend upon, in the National Park Service, the public's engagement with their national park sites. And we certainly appreciate and need their appreciation of those areas, particularly something like Quitobaquito, that we hope to make sustainable going into the future for the enjoyment of everybody and for the species that depend upon it. So thank you for your participation.
Thanks so much, Scott. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand things off here to Rick Marat, who's the Chief of Resources at Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument. And he is going to walk us through a slide deck and a few notes on each slide as it goes through. And actually, I think, Rick, the best way to do that would be to switch spots with me here. And I'm going to set it up so you can see what you're presenting. Yep, and I'll jump up to that. So if you just give it a second here, you will see what you're presenting. So bear with us just a second, folks, as we switch spots and let Rick take over.
All right, as all have noted up to this point, thank you all so very much for participating in this meeting. This is so important to us because having this public engagement element is what we're all about. We want to make sure that we capture folks' thoughts and feelings, and this very important Waipia that is so important to so many people in this area. So if you are seeing the first photograph, which is this is what everybody finally remembers. This is the pond that has been around since around 1962. We have the cottonwood tree there. That's the infamous cottonwood tree. Pond is full. It's a pretty good size. You see the scirpus or the sedge around the edge there. This is what everybody remembers. But it hasn't always been that way. So here in 1957, you can see that the pond is very shallow. There's a lot of emergent vegetation. It's kind of a mud flat, basically a nice little bosque area. 1962, the Park Service went in and started doing some renovation of the pond bottom to include a clay liner and make it larger and a little bit deeper. So by the end of 1962, the middle photograph, you can see what the end result was, a very nice large pond, full. 1968, you can see from the aerial, it's a nice a pond with a very large parking lot. It's almost as big as the pond is there. For those who haven't been out here in a while, that parking lot is now gone, thankfully. So the water levels have been fluctuating. As many have heard, the pond, we dropped a lot of water starting in January. We were seeing some good winter rains. We were hopeful that, going into summer, we're going to be just fine. At the bottom of the photograph here, you can see some black pond liner. Unfortunately, by about the first week of January, the pond level started dropping precipitously and very quickly, which indicated yet another leak had formed in the pond, which was very unfortunate. By March, we began to see a settling crack along the southeast side of the dam, which is where I'm standing there with the photograph. And so we put in some pond liner to try to see if we could seal up the leaking area there. At the top of the photograph of the pond there, you'll see a white line. That is a small little pond that we created just in case we needed to move fish and turtles into a little bit deeper of a pond in the event that the pond completely drained. By August, we measure from a pipe at the dam, and it's a negative number. So by August, the pond level had dropped from almost overflowing to what we call minus 25.5 inches. Today, we went out there this morning to try to check on some things, and the pond is up at 22.5 inches roughly. So we've gained about 3 inches since August. This is probably an effect that we've got cooler daytime temperatures, cooler nighttime temperatures, and so there's not quite as much evaporation as there is when it's 110, 115 degrees out there. So something else to keep in mind is the Quitobaquito area is one of the drier areas of the park. We typically receive around 6.6 inches of rainfall a year in that area. This year we are under 1 inch of rain, so it's a very severe drought situation. And that coupled with some of that nice green vegetation, you've got a lot of evaporation going on, and it's just a number of factors that drop the water level on top of that leak that we discovered. Again, today the pond levels are rising steadily. In April or so, we took a measurement of the outflow of the spring. It was about 8.4 gallons per minute. This morning it was 8.96 gallons per minute, which is a bit of an improvement as well. And so things are looking better. Hopefully going into winter, things will improve dramatically, and we won't have to do an emergency evacuation of fish and turtles. If you've not seen the full context of the pond, back when it was first done, it was quite large. You can see this photograph here. You can see most of the pond is intact there. Today there's a lot of sedge that's growing around the shoreline, so we've lost some of the size of the pond. The key thing to remember is that if we go to this size pond that you see in this photograph, we would have to have no less than 9 gallons of water per minute coming out of the spring. And right now we're at 8.96 today. That could fluctuate lower, it could go a little bit higher. And so what we need to do is be thinking about a pond that may be a little bit smaller than what we're all used to seeing. And so this is one of the things that we're going to see as we go forward, some ideas that some folks have forwarded to make a pond that is a little bit smaller. So one of the ideas, this is a really important thing to think about, is animals that use the water, animals that use the area. And so one of the ideas that is an important concept to keep in mind is maybe a stepped type pond system, not just a nice smooth bottom. If we were using a pond liner, that liner can become a trap and animals slip on it, and they could drown people as well. And so we may look at a stepped concept, and that's something to keep in mind. We have a group of folks that we've been working with since last year, Natural Channel Design, and we asked them to kind of look at the volume of water flow, look at the size of the pond, and again, this is where we get this 9 gallon per minute minimum to fill up the pond in its original size. And so what Natural Channel Design was trying to do is look at options to make the pond a little bit smaller. So here's some ideas. These look very industrial, and I'm sure that we could look at different options. This is why we're really interested in what other folks might have an idea for. So what they did is they just took the idea and said, okay, well, we got the central pond here, we've got some overflow areas, and in the event that the water levels increased due to rainfall. And so the next couple of slides are going to be different iterations of this same concept. So here's another one where you have a main pond, then you have an overflow pond, and another one here. And then there were some thoughts about if we wanted to address the channel that goes from the spring down to the pond. There are issues with that. We are not in favor of this because there's a small tiny snail that lives there that needs that faster running water, and changing that right now would probably affect those snails in a very adverse way. So I don't think we're going to be addressing the channel itself at this point. One last option that we've looked at, and this is kind of incorporating this stepped approach, a smaller pond, keeping where we see the sedge or the scirpus, that's there today, we would keep that intact. It could be an overflow, could act as a place for vegetation to grow. Then you have a stepped pond that can respond to different levels of water. And of course, the deepest would be around 7 feet, the shallowest around 2 feet. And then around the perimeter, there would be some, we would allow some vegetation to grow. So these are really the only designs that we've received so far. And this is why we invite everyone listening to participate. If anybody has some particularly interesting ideas or thoughts, this is why I don't have any pictures on this last slide, because you are the picture. You are the ones that have the imagination and the ideas and the thoughts. We welcome everybody's input, and we're looking at what this pond might look like over the next 100 years. And so that's what this is about. This is what we're trying to achieve. And I think we can come to a good course of action and a good design That's going to be good both for the cultural, sacred needs of that area and also for the endangered species that use it. Aaron, I'm done. Thank you.
The primary person to field questions, you want me to?
Either way. Yeah, either way.
Okay.
I'm fine. Yeah, sure.
Sure, so yeah, if you want to just open up the floor.
I can do that.
To questions and comments here. And
Yeah.
Between Kristen and I will.
And I guess the other thing is, everybody's got your email address, right? Yours and Kristen's?
I'll put it into the chat.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to open up to questions and thoughts from you all. But I know we can't necessarily throw pictures down from you to us and drawings and ideas and so on. So Aaron and Kristen are going to provide their emails. And if you have a design concept that you'd like to share, please feel free to email it. If you'd like to write some notes or some ideas or some thoughts, questions, concerns, whatever, feel free to email those to Aaron and Kristen, and they'll filter through those and get them over to us. So I'll at this point open it up to anybody's questions.
Like just remind folks, they can unmute themselves.
Oh yeah, if you got yourself muted, you may have to unmute yourself.
Have you determined which of the designs would require the least maintenance?
We are so in the beginning of this, we're not even there yet. So that all will have to be part of the consideration. And I do have, for that very reason, I've got concerns about a geomembrane is one of the ideas that has been floated. The other option would be a bentonite clay or something like that. There are some options out there, but anything we do out there is going to require some maintenance. We're hoping to find something that's not going to be too ponderous.
I have a question about the water temperature. With that step design, it seems like there's so many shallow areas that the water temperature would rise, and that would adversely affect both the fish and the turtles. And that's a big concern.
Yeah, actually not. These fish are very adept to changes in salinities and chemistry and temperatures. They do very fine with that. The step design, yes, the 2-foot area will be a bit warmer than the 7-foot area, but that's the idea, is that a step design could allow fish and turtles to move to cooler areas if they desire to do so.
One thing I'd like to add to that is part of the concept of the step design is to allow the pond to expand and contract the available habitat and its size as water flow, the spring flow changes over time. So we have seasonal variations with the amount of water that comes from the spring. And at times there would be a fuller pond and more available habitat for the turtles and the fish. And then if during low times, like we've experienced this summer, then it would allow that to contract into a smaller area. If we were to just make it one static size, then that would limit the ability for that to adjust over time.
And I guess the other concept is that as it gets shallower, it gets smaller, so there's less surface area for wind and evaporation to have an impact as well.
So what is the average depth right now?
Oh, yeah, it's a hard thing to say. The deepest point right now is about 2.5, 3 feet, and the shallowest area is just a couple of inches.
Okay, thank you.
When it's full right now, when it's full, yeah. About 3 feet maximum, yeah. I'd be at the southeast corner of the pond, yeah. Anybody else? Again, I just want to reiterate that this is a bit of a difficult venue, and we're pushing something on you right now that it's difficult to handle in this kind of a venue here. But again, please feel free to text or email your questions or design concepts or whatever to Aaron and to Kristen. Aaron's going to post the email address.
Yeah, so it's on the chat, but I had a question come from the chat as well.
Okay, so we do have a chat question, and if you can access your chat, Aaron's got the email address on the chat. So Aaron does have a chat question.
So the question came in through chat is from Gina Corover. Have you considered restoring the pond to the pre-1962 wetland state in PS intervention?
Yeah, we've talked about that in a not really in depth, because right now we do now have the turtles and the fish. The habitat with a little bit deeper water is more conducive for the fish and the turtles, and so going back to pre-1962 probably would not be good for the fish and the turtles at this point. Especially if you have a situation where it could dry out completely, then we would lose those species in that area.
Hey, Rick, it's Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
So, I mean, is there a solution where we could have like an area of more of a natural Cienega wetlands portion and then a deeper section for the turtles, or is that something that could be adapted into the stepped?
Yeah, so I don't know if you all can see the photograph or the picture there again. But so the green areas would be that exact function. It would allow any overflow. So as Scott mentioned, as the spring adjusts and flows during the different times of the season, we'll also have rainfall, and any nice big heavy rains would raise the pond level as well. And so we'll still have the overflow. So you'll see at the south end, there's a little pipe going across the dam there. That overflow would go into the old farm fields, but then that light green area would act as a sump and allow that shoreline marshy type vegetation to thrive. And indeed, it could also help us to restore the cottonwood trees that were there too.
And if the spring flows were to recover enough that there was a constant outflow from the pond, then that area could be would support the Cienega situation.
Right.
Question from Jared Horsey: any possibility of restoring fig pomegranate orchards as part of the restoration process?
Yeah, Jared, that's a good question, and thank you. So if we can get water to establish, that would be something we could talk about in the auspices of a cultural landscape report. If there are recommendations to do that. Now, the problem with that is that, having the staff and the people to be able to manage that resource, it would be certainly something that we would be, and we do have the original, cuttings from the original figs and pomegranates. We do have them available to us anytime we need them and want them. And so that would be an option. That could be a design option in the future. But again, the amount of work it would take to continue allowing those species to grow and thrive, that we don't have the kind of staff for that yet. But of course, I think one of the ideas is volunteerism. We certainly celebrate volunteers and need them. And if we had the ability to have that sustainable through the future, that could be a concept that we could entertain. But it would require a lot of work and a lot of time from some people, some individuals, to maintain that.
And Rick, I think that's an area where ISDA could definitely collaborate if we wanted to get serious about that.
Nice.
As a way to support that.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that too, because we have talked about the ideas of under a cultural landscape report to try to see what we might be able to do to restore some of the heritage plantings that were there, and but it just is such a daunting, especially since it's such a distant place from the headquarters. It takes a bit to do that, but if we have a good stream of volunteers, for the next 100 years, then and that would be something that would be workable, perhaps. Yes. Yeah, right. It's not off the table. Let's put it that way. Yes, sir. We got them.
Have there been pomegranates growing in that area?
Yes, we actually had up until well, I got here in 2012, and there were 2 pomegranates that were still alive. They were very stressed out, and then we lost them. What, about 2016 or so? We had some more drought conditions, and we lost them. Very hot, very dry, and unfortunately we lost them. But we did have cuttings of them, and I believe it's U of A. Don't quote me on that, but I believe U of A did some cuttings for us in their heritage program, and or I think they're at the Arizona State Museum now, or Arizona Desert Museum, and so they have the cuttings. We have the plants. We actually had some at the visitor center in pots that we could show people, and so yeah, we can get those plants, and they are the original from the cuttings from the plants that were there. Yeah. You're welcome.
This is Lauren again. Those plants are actually widely available, like in Tucson, Desert Survivors Nursery has them. So, and the Mission Gardens also has a few plants. So they're out there in the community as well. I mean, if anyone's not like, this isn't an ad, but they've proliferated beyond the Kino Heritage Fruit Tree Project. So I think we would definitely be able to get plants from the genetic stock, and people can go see them in other places as well.
That's true. And for those of you who are in the Tucson area, go to Tumacacri. They have a heritage garden there that is absolutely amazing.
Going back to the pond issues, I believe I heard you say earlier that you discarded the idea of a plastic liner.
No, we've not discarded that idea. We're just looking at options right now. The plastic liner could certainly, again, the materials would have to be very stout, very durable, because as has been mentioned, once the water levels drop, which is expected during times of drought and lesser flow, some of those liner elements would be exposed, 2-3 feet deep or more, and so they would have to be UV-IR resistant. They would have to be able to withstand emergent vegetation punching through them. They would have to be able to resist rodents chewing on it and digging into it or whatever. So there's a lot of problems with a man-made fabric type liner, but that is definitely something we're considering because of its durability.
I would personally recommend against it. I have a backyard hobby pond, and it utilizes plastic liner. It's about 1,500 gallons, and it's 16 years old. And there are spots I really would need to think about replacing. And it's not just the elements from above, vegetation nearby is poking through. So I'm sort of against it for something like Quitobaquito that you want more natural.
Right, and that's definitely a concern that we have. Now, the one you're talking about, is it actually plastic?
It is, it's very similar to roofing rubber, actually.
Okay, so it's like a pond liner.
It is a commercial pond. It is a commercial pond liner purchased at Lowe's.
Okay, so like a rubberized pond liner. The material that has been forwarded to us in terms of an idea is what's called a geomembrane. I apologize, I am not entirely familiar with what geomembranes are, but apparently they can withstand the UV, the infrared, and they're a bit more resistant than normal pond liners, pool liners, that kind of thing. Our goal is part of our parameters that we don't want to mess with this for 100 years or better if we can. That's something that's going to be looked at in terms of what the best material would be. And you're right, we would like to have something that looks more natural, and that's going to be difficult to achieve. unless we go
Right.
back to a clay liner, which a clay liner is fine, but then we'll be looking at this in the next 50, 60 years.
This may be a very innocent question, but I know that bentonite is used a lot for plugging leaks in wells and dams, and it's a really old-fashioned mineral that has been used in the past. But I was just thinking, it's organic. It might be something that is would need to be replaced or repaired, but it wouldn't break down with UV. My problem with my pond liner was rodents chewing in from the other side. So that's an issue with any kind of liner, I suppose.
I suspect you're right. That's exactly the conversation we need to have with the folks that we're working with as the engineers, because that is definitely a concern. And the pond liner that's at Quitobaquito right now is a bentonite pond liner, and it has served us well up until about 2006. That's something that we could go back to, going and just reinstall another bentonite liner. Problem is they age and they don't last forever. This is a common, what we're seeing happening today at Quitobaquito is a very common thing with bentonite liners. One of the things that I learned through this process is that a lot of these folks that have them for their cattle tanks, they don't fail as easily because they have the cattle running all around there, and if they get a leak someplace, they'll throw some more bentonite down there and let the cattle stomp it down into a hole. And apparently somebody has been creative, and they have some sort of a roller that you can use to roll around the edge of a pond that facsimilates the calf's hooves. So, there are certainly some options out there that we can certainly take a look at and consider.
Unfortunately, there's nothing that's going to last forever.
Well, that's very true.
This is Lauren again. Just speaking from a historic preservation standpoint, I mean, it's important to acknowledge that nothing will last forever, but I think we should definitely, it's important to the National Park Service to have an option where we can build in, maintenance and preservation maintenance that's a little more easy than the current liner is. And I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself earlier. I'm Lauren Kingston. I'm the cultural, the Cultural Resource Program Manager for Organ Pipe National Monument.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. That's exactly right. So this doesn't just have a component of trying to save fish and turtles. As we've stressed, this has a very important context to the sacredness of the area, the ceremonial uses of the area, and also the history that goes back to time immemorial, if you will. But the period of significance would probably be around the early 20th century, but that's also being looked at to see what we would be looking at in terms of a cultural landscape report. It probably would not be 1962. But just bear in mind that there have been different iterations of water impoundment there, probably for the last at least 150 years, maybe more. We do know that people have been out there on that landscape for over 12,000 years. So it's a multi-component, multi-level area, and it's a complex situation. So there's a lot of complexity to what we're seeing there today is again, a very different story than what was here 2,000 years ago. But the key that makes us a little bit more complex is that we do have 2 endangered species there now, and that's adding to the need to have sustainable water that's going to last. Because in some cases, as everybody knows, that the Rio Sonoita is an imperiled water course, and there are areas that have completely dried out. There's only like 5 different areas where the mud turtle exists. Quitobaquito is one of them, and the other four are difficult situations. The pupfish along the Rio Sonoita, there's only a couple of pools that exist now where they survive. The longfin dace is another endangered species. That fish no longer lives in its natural habitat. There's no place for them to live. So that's another consideration is other endangered species that might be utilizing that water that we put it there. The other one is a small snail. It's called a trionia. This little fellow is about 2 millimeters or so in length. It likes the faster moving water channel. So the spring head down to the pond is where this snail likes to live, and ironically, that's where the dace likes to live as well. So the complexity of having an endangered species does force us to be thinking about not just some of the things that were going on here 100 years ago, but now we've got fish and turtles and snails that we need to be thinking about for their survival in the long term.
And the complexity that it's in designated wilderness as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry to burst that bubble.
It is designated wilderness. This is true.
I was a little late to the meeting. Sorry about that. So you might have covered this already. This is Andrew Sisk from the Ajo Copper News. So the partnership between ISDA and the Park Service, is that kind of what's initiating this latest project or research into what may be a project to save to do restoration? Or was this already an ongoing project that is this coming in, and maybe what's the nature of the partnership and the funding and all of that?
Sure. So Andrew, I'll jump in on that. Those of you who have recently joined us, Aaron Cooper, Executive Director for the International Sonoran Desert Alliance. And this has been a long-standing partnership between Oregon Pipe Cactus National Monument and the International Sonoran Desert Alliance, really back to the founding of early 90s, so it's always been a close relationship. More recently, and so you see that every 2 years through the symposium, where although ISDA is the convener, Oregon Pipe Cactus, among others, are key partners in making that even possible. And so it's been a collaborative relationship throughout. But more recently, we've been really more intentional about our approach through the lens of a biosphere reserve, and sort of rethinking what does that really mean, and how does that really support community engagement and engagement across jurisdictions and boundaries, and this challenge, and Rick can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Quitobaquito has been seeing a trend of diminishing spring flow, and so this is not a new thing, but I think it became acute recently, and our autumn leadership in particular, and I'll just call Lorraine Eiler out, was really vocal with myself as the organizational leader about saying this is important. We need to find a way to be able to support this work, and so we happened to be at that time in conversation with a donor who was in search of a project that would have significance for our autumn membership and our autumn leadership. And Lorraine basically told me, this is it, this is the project. And so he has very generously donated a large amount of money that I reached out to Rick and Scott at Oregon Pipe and said, I know you all are working on a concept but haven't figured out how to fund it yet. We are going to commit to bridging that funding gap and finding a way to do that. And so that's really what kicked us off and got us really serious about saying, okay, well now this is all very feasible because we anticipate it's going to be expensive, but we have a large sum of money that we're going to be able to bring to the table. So let's get serious about doing it. And that's really what has kicked off this public information session. Rick and Scott were already working with contractors on some concepts, but weren't quite sure how it was going to be funded. And so it was real timely that they shared that work with me. I shared it with my board, and we all agreed this is a great project to collaborate on. This is exactly what a biosphere reserve model is designed to do, which is to have sort of shared management and care and thoughtfulness about the landscape. And so that's really how this came about. And Rick, if you want to add, or Scott, if you want to add to that.
Yeah. Hi, Andrew. This is Scott Stone from Oregon Pipe. I would just like to add that this partnership with ISDA has been so valuable to the park over the years, and recently with the Biosphere Reserve and our planning efforts associated with that. What this donation and ISDA's interest in helping us out is really doing is going to help jumpstart the implementation of concerns we've had for a long time, leading to what we're discussing tonight, which is restoration alternatives and how to make the pond level more sustainable over time due to these long-term decreases of the spring flow, and the other potential factors of affecting that. So the funding of the National Park Service is not always conducive to addressing short-term or quick evolving needs. It can take several years to line up the funding for different types of projects, no matter how important they are. And so this is really going to help us jumpstart that. We're already starting to line up additional funding based on knowing that there's a start, a big start to getting that funding in place through ISDA's contribution.
So we did have a question about timeline. Is there a timeline for the restoration of the project?
Yeah, so what we're looking at right now, so tonight is kind of our kickoff. We're going to have additional meetings with folks. On the 13th, we'll have agency meetings where we can get scientists and others who have direct experience with this kind of work to weigh in and provide options and ideas, just like this meeting tonight. On the 20th, we'll have a tribal meeting also, which is we consult with 12 different tribes, and this will be a tribal-only venue. And then as we proceed, we'll have to decide whether or not other meetings will be necessary or valued. Once we get all the information from folks, we're going to try to pull together the different ideas and concepts, come up with some designs, and hopefully get through the compliance process by early winter. Once we get through the compliance process, then we can begin to execute the project. And one of the ideas would be to hopefully get things done in time for, well, we all hope for a monsoon season, but if next year's like this year, we may have to wait a little while. But we're hoping to be able to take advantage of any monsoonal rains that come to help fill up the pond a little bit there. And hopefully by this time next year, we'll have a new pond. A lot has to happen before then now.
Any other questions or thoughts? Please feel free to share.
This is Kevin Dahl with National Parks Conservation Association calling in from Tucson.
Hello, Kevin.
Hi. This is such a bright spot of good news. It's making me smile despite the troubled times that we're in and the horrible things that are happening along the border and elsewhere. Just congratulations to ISDA with Aaron's leadership and your Tohono O'odham partners to put together something that's just so helpful to this incredible, sacred, wonderful, marvelous resource that is, in trouble. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I think you've got a lot of people in here who are also smiling in their hearts because Agua Ipia is definitely worth everything that we can invest in it to make it right again.
Do you know,
By
Rick
the
or
way,
Scott, if this, I'm sorry.
Albaipia is the awesome name for Quitobaquito.
How's his pronunciation? How's his pronunciation?
Is this a new, like, I guess I've never even thought of the idea of contributing toward a specific project in a national park or monument. Is that kind of a new, or not new, but is that a fairly rare thing? Or is that a fairly common thing that I just never heard about? A great idea.
Yeah, hi, this is Scott. I'll take that question. Great question, by the way. It's like, hey, I pay taxes. Why would I donate money to the federal government to do what they should be doing? So the reality is, with many of our federal lands, National Park Service included, we don't often have the set base funding that can cover all of the needs, particularly as we're facing new emerging needs, climate change as an example. That is a challenge that is causing, advanced erosion in certain areas, damage to infrastructure from higher intensity storms, and can exceed, the yearly operational budget of a park just to fix the damage from a storm. There are avenues for that when the area is declared an emergency zone. But for projects like this and many other things that are near and dear to our heart, very important to serving our essential purpose, we do have a process for competing amongst other national park sites for very limited money that's set aside for projects. That can take years and years in order to compete and to secure those funds. What I was trying to mention earlier is that type of funding is not conducive to something that we want to fix this yesterday. We're so concerned about it. That's where our partners across the country and across the world come into play. So the National Park Service has had a long-standing partnership organization structure that allows us to work into agreements, accept funds through typically a third party. So here locally, ISDA is serving that role. At the national level, maybe you've heard of the National Park Foundation. So as federal employees, we're not allowed to go and ask for money. That's not my job. I'm not doing that tonight. But partners like the National Park Foundation, like ISDA, they are independent groups, often nonprofit organizations that work to help, facilitate moving things either quicker or things that are just not getting that national attention in order to get funded. So it has become an important component of our overall funding picture in the National Park Service. And more in recent years, as funding has become more challenging, and the range of projects has just so greatly expanded. You've probably heard recently about infrastructure and deferred maintenance of facilities, historic structures. There is going to be some money coming to that. We are looking at angles at Oregon Pipe on how to capitalize on that and get projects funded. But there's very narrow definitions of what will qualify for that funding. But that will help the National Park Service in a very profound way over the next coming years. And please let me know if that did not answer your question.
That was great. Thank you. Yeah, that's very informative. I appreciate that.
You bet.
And Andrew, this is Lauren again. Part of the federal law that we work with to do any federal project, any federal undertaking, the National Historic Preservation Act, which I work with, and the National the NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act, both of those laws include a public comment aspect. And so public comment is considered as part of projects, under the law. So we're, this meeting is we're not doing an EA. Well, we don't know if we're doing an EA or an EIS yet for this project, but we are, facilitating public comment. I'm sorry, this is my baby. We are facilitating public comment and public interaction as part of this project through these meetings with ISDA. And so I just want you to know that that is part of federal law to engage with the public on projects like this.
I would like to add, unless you're the Department of Homeland Security and you can waive those laws for the building of that really stupid wall.
Thank you, former neighbor Kevin Dahl.
Hi, Lauren.
Well, folks, I just want to kind of make sure that we made plenty of space for any questions if we had them. I know some folks joined us late or didn't catch the beginning, and I apologize for that. We did test the live stream function, but we tested it out internally, so it works fine as long as you're part of ISDA. And I should have tested, externally. We've got some issues with the live stream going out to the wider world, unfortunately. So I will be posting the recording on the same website, so isdanet.org/Quitobaquito. And then I'll also post, with Rick's permission, I'll post the slide deck so that, if you missed some of the early slides or you want to just sit with them and review, those will all be up on our website. And again, just emailing myself or Kristen at isdanet.org, and we'll put links for that up as well. So if you wanted to sit with this anymore, have further comments or thoughts, and you don't get to them tonight, we are going to be compiling those for, at least the next couple months. So definitely feel like you can continue to share out and provide thoughts and input. So any other thoughts, questions?
There's a question in the chat.
A question in the chat? Okay, let me pull that up. So this is a great one. Will there be any interpretation component to go with the restoration project? Teach visitors about the natural and cultural resources. NPS and ISDA work.
Yeah, absolutely. As we proceed with this kind of work, anytime we do big projects like this, there's always a interpretive component just to try to educate folks as to what's going on, why it's happening, and what the outcome is going to be. So I would expect that we would definitely have both on web pages, both probably ISDA as well, ours, National Park Service webpage. We would probably do what we call a site bulletin in the Oregon Pipe. So yes, we would have interpretive components too. We also have van tours out to Quitobaquito, and that would be part of the discussions.
When we're non-COVID.
When we're non-COVID, yeah. When we're able to live again.
Well, folks, if there are no further burning questions, Lorraine Eiler, who is a founding board member of the International Sonoran Desert Alliance, will actually be kind of taking us out here. So you can come and take my spot here, Lorraine.
Sapintat kemenya itu mui citada katam. Pachema masias haisho ke alwaipem mawana kokyo maka niko gadakam ki ame cho ay kaka sias ore dachem machum hiachiratam ki kam ame cho uskep mahma chok tam mapshi mahma choik. I just want to thank everybody for participating, and just want to share that my great-grandparents lived there for many years, and it was a big community, big thriving community. I know that stories have gone out that people have gone through, and it sounded sometimes when I read articles, it sounds like people just go through it, and that there's nobody living there, but that's exactly the wrong information, because there was a thriving community way back. And so so our interest in that, the Hiachiratam interest in that, is that a lot of our relatives that are around and very concerned about the area, and it's a very spiritual area for us. And so we continue to go there for ceremonies. There is a cemetery there with all our great-grandparents and relatives. And we also have had a couple of reburials there that was given back to us after the Repatriation Act was passed. And so we really think very highly of the place, and welcome anybody that has an interest in the place and that is willing to help us in any way. I thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for participating. And again, any further thoughts, feel free to email those out and watch the website for additional posts. With that, I think we will call tonight a wrap. And I apologize again for the technical issues. As we share out kind of a final version, hopefully we'll have an in-person, even if it's an outdoor version of this, I think we'll do an in-person share out for that. So thank you all for joining us, and have a great evening.
Thank you, folks. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks.